Welcome to NASDAQ Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at NASDAQ. Joining me at the market site in Times Square, we have Ricardo Alvarez-Diaz. He's the CEO of Alvarez-Diaz and Villalon. And we're going to talk about Puerto Rico and can it build its economy. Ricardo, and I'm hoping the answer is yes, because it is just an absolutely lovely place to visit. And it's interesting, your company is more architecture kind of company, but you serve as a liaison between the private sector and FEMA and other regulatory agencies on that critical infrastructure, construction, and housing issues. Tell us more about that relationship.
Well, I think that the biggest challenge we have is the inconsistency when it comes to the actual funding itself. I mean, there's funding that has been assigned, but it hasn't really come to Puerto Rico yet. So that creates a certain degree of uneasiness, and people don't know what to expect. The amount of hope that we actually had right after the hurricane, even though it was a devastating situation and over 3,000 people died, which is more people than 9/11. Yep. In a way, it gave people kind of hope that, oh, maybe we can rebuild again and do it right and do it resiliently. But that hope kind of was affected by a political situation that happened this summer, and the fact that now the funding has not been approved as quickly as it should.
Right. Well, sadly, I don't think people realize that Puerto Rico is part of the United States, and we are helping our own. That's one of the issues there.
Right.
In terms of federal aid disbursements, where are you right now? Are they becoming more regular?
Well, no. Well, but part of the challenge. Well, there's two separations here. There's the FEMA funding, and there's the HUD funding. The HUD funding has been appropriated. I think it's at $20 billion of appropriation, but out of that, only $1.5 billion have been assigned for the island. On the other side, FEMA, part of the challenge we have there is that I think over 150 projects have been approved out of 9,000. So with the monitor and some of the issues that have happened, and the fear of misusing those funds, it kind of slowed down how quick we could get those funds.
Yeah, well, tell us about the new investment philosophy, Invest Puerto Rico. It sounds as if the island is taking a lot of this into their own hands because you have no option but to move forward. Tell us about this new philosophy.
Well, actually, let me tell you quickly about some of the things that happened right after the hurricane. Companies that were, as you know, I mean, before the hurricane, Puerto Rico was always mentioned in somewhat of a negative
with
thing.
Debt and so forth.
The debt, the $72 billion, the fact that the government bankruptcy. But what we've seen after the hurricane is that indirectly, because of the amount of information and we were showcased all over the world because of the situation, people started to look at Puerto Rico a little differently, especially from the private sector standpoint. Opportunity. Companies that were there of maybe thinking that they were going to leave, they're actually doubling down when it comes to real estate, buying hotels, rebuilding hotels, and the amount of hospitality projects that are going to come out is incredible. So, but Invest Puerto Rico was created because one of the challenges you have is that if you give that role to the government, if there's a change in government, there's not a consistent branding of an island. So Invest Puerto Rico was created by the government in conjunction, together with the private sector, to better have continuity about what we can offer as an island and all the benefits of actually investing in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, and there's other things in addition to just investing, but there's been some changes with labor and tax incentives and opportunity zones. And I think really, like you had mentioned before, the only way to get this done is to make sure that there is some private oversight so that you do have the consistency. But do you really think Puerto Rico can reemerge? Because this gives the island the opportunity to rebuild state-of-the-art green investments, the latest technology. It could, in hindsight, perhaps be a good thing for moving forward.
Well, that's exactly right. And as a matter of fact, even if I mentioned that the federal funding hasn't come out as quickly as possible, the reality is that it's going to come, and it will come. Listen, Katrina hit in 2005, and FEMA is still there after 14 years. So what we're looking is that people are hopefully seeing the island as a place of mid and long-term investment in doing business, especially when it comes to, for example, housing. As housing starts to slow down in the U.S., people are looking for a place to invest, and housing is one of the biggest opportunities that exist in Puerto Rico. And opportunity zones is another one that people don't mention enough. I mean, we don't have a cap of 25% like other states, 100%. So mapping-wise, 95% of the island is within an opportunity zone location. So that opens up possibilities for long-term investment, and the fact that we have the federal funding to invest in the right infrastructure, we're going to be able to come out on the other side in a much better place that definitely we were before the hurricane.
I took a look at some of your architectural designs on your website, and they clearly are state of the art. Is the construction that's being done to rebuild the island, is it going to be more hurricane proof or be able to sustain these kind of weather patterns that are coming through?
Well, let me tell you something. We designed a project in 2014, which was the first mixed income affordable housing project in Puerto Rico. And it was 80% done by the time it was hit by the hurricane. And nothing happened to the project. Why? Because if you build correctly, if you build resiliently, sustainable, and we've been doing that for 18 years, and that's what we are actually not only doing in Puerto Rico, and and also in the U.S. and in the Virgin Islands. The codes are there. What we need to make sure is that people follow the codes and they do it in a way. It's not because it's more expensive or cheaper. It's because you're putting your family in danger when you build without taking that in account.
Ricardo, thank you so much. I, for one, am looking forward to going back to the island. Thanks for joining us at MarketSite. And thank you for joining me on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at NASDAQ.